and welcome to our nightly news program coming to you live from Al 24 News here in Algiers. I'm your host, Karim Zachary, and these are today's top stories. The international mediation headed by Algeria presents concrete proposals to the Malian parties to implement the peace and reconciliation agreement and invites them to avoid any action that undermine their efforts. Also coming up, UN envoy to Libya calls on the political leaders to fulfill their obligations to hold elections within this continuous consultations with the various Libyan parties. In an open letter addressed to the head of the Spanish government, the Progressive Union of Spanish Public Prosecutors calls on Sanchez to stop supporting the Moroccan occupation policies in Western Sahara. And the social tension is expanding within Morocco due to the high prices. Also ahead in our news, a 15-year-old was murdered during the Zionist occupation forces storming of the Aqaba Jabir camp in Jericho. Hundreds of settlers launched new incursions into Al-Aqsa courtyards, and the Palestinian Foreign Ministry warns of an imminent aggression on the Gaza Strip. Hello again and welcome to the program. First off in our news, international mediation in Mali confirmed that it had submitted concrete proposals to the Malian parties to revive the implementation of the signed peace and reconciliation agreement emanating from the Algiers path. Here's Zahra Farjani with more.
The peace process in Mali has hit a stumbling block. Almost all armed groups in the north that signed the 2015 Algiers peace agreement with the Malian government have suspended their participation. However, this weekend, an international mediation group consisting of representatives from Algeria and the 5 member countries of the UN Security Council took an important step towards reviving the peace agreement. According to a press release, the international mediation presented concrete proposals to relaunch the implementation of the Algiers peace process. The mediation affirmed that it is convinced that these proposals, which consider the concerns of the signatory parties during their various consultations in both Mali and Algeria, would restore confidence and promote the re-establishment of a constructive dialogue under the supervision of the Agreement Monitoring Committee chaired by Algeria. The mediation also expresses its concerns about what it describes as the current escalation of tension between the signatories. Therefore, it issued an urgent appeal, calling on the parties to refrain from making statements and taking actions that it says may undermine its efforts, calling for placing the interests of Mali and its people above all other considerations. In its statement, the mediation also renewed its full commitment to the continuation of the signatories and the Malian people towards achieving peace, stability and sustainable reconciliation. The Peace and Reconciliation Agreement emanating from the Algiers process has offered real potential for peace consolidation and enhanced local participatory governance. Thus, the UN stresses at every opportunity the need to speed up its implementation.
Moving on, President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune, received on Monday the ambassadors of the Czech Republic and Vietnam, who paid him a farewell visit at the end of their missions in Algeria.
Je suis un peu triste. Je suis contente d'avoir pu finalement rencontrer Monsieur le Président.
I am very happy to meet President Tebboune, but at the same time I am sad because I will leave after 5 years in Algeria. Bilateral cooperation between our two countries has witnessed remarkable development, and I hope that I have worked well on that. Despite being affected by the COVID pandemic, we were able to progress with this partnership. We have a strong partnership with the Algerian Ministry of Defense, and we also look forward to cooperation with the Ministry of Culture and the exchange of experiences in the field of protecting historical heritage.
I had the honor to meet the President of the Republic. We talked about the distinguished relations between Vietnam and Algeria, as well as ways to develop them in the future. We thought of strengthening and intensifying visits, especially high-level visits, so that two parties could discuss ways to strengthen partnership in the field of economy. I take this opportunity to express my thanks to the Algerian government and authorities for their support, accompaniment and cooperation throughout my tenure.
Algerian Major General Mr. Said Changriha, Chief of Staff of the People's National Army, is making an official visit to Brazil as the representative of the President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune, at the invitation of the Secretary of Defense Production of Brazil, Major Brigadier Rui Chagas Mesquita. Major General Shingriha will take part in the proceedings of the 13th edition of the Defense and Security Exhibition LAAD 2023. This visit also aims at strengthening cooperation between the People's National Army and the Brazilian Armed Forces and allows the two parties to discuss issues of common interest. The special representative of the Secretary General and head of the United Nations mission in Libya, Mr. Abdoulaye Bathily, called on political leaders to fulfill their commitments to finalize the constitutional and legal framework for holding elections this year. Bathily said on his Twitter account that he met in Sabha a number of representatives of civil society, youth, women, military, and security leaders from all over the country as part of expanded consultations with various parties across Libya to support a comprehensive path to the elections.
I had the opportunity at Sabha University to listen to a group of the brightest women and men of the South, representing a number of local municipalities and civil society, and I took note of their frustration with the endless transitional stages as they demanded that elections be held this year without further delay. And I joined them in calling for the political leaders in Libya to respect the will of their people and provide them with a more prosperous future.
To a different development now. In an open letter, the Progressive Union of Spanish Public Prosecutors called on the Spanish Prime Minister to stop supporting the Moroccan occupation policy in Western Sahara and to take the necessary measures to reach a referendum on self-determination in the region. This comes after a visit that led a delegation of Spanish public prosecutors and jurists to the Sahrawi refugee camps, where they stressed the need for Spain to accomplish its duty in order to promote the interests of the Sahrawi people and to achieve its social, economic, and political progress. Dozens of Moroccan cities are witnessing popular protests against the high cost of living since the beginning of the month of Ramadan, in addition to inflation that increased with a sharp rise in the prices of food products, especially at the level of agricultural commodities. These demonstrations come in the context of strong inflationary pressures that expose the government to criticism from trade unions, the parliamentary opposition, and local media.
Inflation in Morocco is driven by the rise in food commodity prices. There's no point in raising the main interest rate in order to reduce demand and affect inflation. The problem lies in insufficient supply, especially at the level of agricultural commodities.
World Bank expects Algerian economy would improve during the current year, supported by optimism about the increase in European demand for energy supplies from Algeria. The International Finance Corporation, in its latest report on the prospects for the economies of North Africa and the Middle East, estimated that Algeria would grow by 2% by the end of this year. Economy-related news still. After 5 years of fruitful partnership, Sonatrach, Algerian oil giant, has renewed its contract with the Algerian Space Agency, which transfers cooperation between the two parties to broader and more comprehensive fields. Cooperation that guarantees the provision of accurate and credible live data via satellites, which allows Sonatrach to break dependence on international bodies and enhance its technical and technological independence.
The renewal of this agreement between Sonatrach and the Algerian Space Agency will witness a new period through this fruitful agreement, which made it possible since 2018 to provide Sonatrach with high-quality scientific information and data to allow it to use space technicities and applications in studying and developing the projects of Sonatrach in all its tasks.
Two other developments in Africa now. About 440 people were killed during the first 3 months of Quest year-end attacks launched by armed groups in the Juga region in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. Congo security authorities said they reported the kidnapping of another 120 people and the burning of around 700 homes during attacks by armed groups, which led to the displacement of thousands of residents and the looting of residents' properties. The authorities added that 72 militants were eliminated during this period. To the latest development in the Middle East now, Palestinian teen was martyred on Monday during the raids of the Zionist forces in Akbat Jaber camp in the West Bank. Clashes erupted between Palestinian young men and the Zionist forces, which left 2 other Palestinians wounded. Here's Osama Ayadi with more.
Shortly after the insurgencies in Al-Aqsa Mosque and the Zionist assault against Palestinian worshippers, Zionist forces killed a Palestinian teen and wounded 2 others during a military raid in the West Bank on Monday. Palestinian Health Ministry declared that 15-year-old Mohammed Balhan sustained gunshot wounds to his head, chest and abdomen.
I had just left my house when I saw military forces and people throwing stones. I stopped the car and got out. I saw one person get shot. We took him to an ambulance. After the military left the camp, we walked further ahead and saw a boy lying on the ground. I approached him and realized that it's my son.
What will happen to us? They shot him in the head during the raid. What will happen to us? What is going to happen to our Palestinian people? Thank God for everything.
Occupation forces operated in the Akbat Jab refugee camp, opened fire and hurled explosives on Palestinian citizens. Later on Monday, mourners were seen marching in the funeral procession of Balhan, carrying his body on stretcher and chanting slogans. Zionist violence has surged this year, with frequent military raids and violence by Zionist settlers in the occupied West Bank. Reports have shown that more than 90 Palestinians have been killed since January.
They will leave and we will remain on this mountain. Their open war led by Ben-Gvir, Smotrich and others will backfire on them, God willing.
Tensions have been especially high following Zionist police raids on Al-Aqsa Mosque compound last week and a series of attacks on neighboring countries Syria and Lebanon.
The occupation's government is attempting to secure the way for thousands of settlers who gathered near the outpost in order to reach the mount.
Despite warnings of further escalation in the Palestinian-occupied lands, reports have warned against an imminent aggression on the Gaza Strip by the Zionist forces. The last events in the Holy Aqsa Mosque have shown the extremist intentions of Netanyahu's government and its willingness to escalate tension in the region amidst international warnings and condemnations, along with domestic refusal and accusations on the Zionist government, which is showing an aggressive and irresponsible act against Palestinians.
Hans Grunberg, the UN envoy for Yemen, said that the Saudi-Omani talks in Sana'a bring Yemen closer to real progress towards peace. In addition, the head of the Supreme Political Council of the Houthi group affirmed Houthis' firm position on achieving peace that the Yemeni people are seeking. More with Salman Asib.
Saudi and Omani delegation held talks with Houthi officials in Yemeni capital Sana'a as part of international efforts to find a settlement to Yemen's 9-year conflict that has killed tens of thousands and left 80% of Yemen's population dependent on humanitarian aid. Hans Grunberg, UN envoy for Yemen, described the ongoing Yemen peace efforts, including Saudi and Omani talks in Sana'a, as the closest to Yemen and to real progress towards lasting peace since the war began, and confirmed in press statements that Sana'a negotiations present a real opportunity to start a complete political process.
This is a moment to be seized and built on, and a real opportunity to start an inclusive political process under UN auspices to sustainably end the conflict.
For its part, the head of the Houthi Supreme Political Council underlined Houthis' firm position on the honorable peace the Yemeni people are seeking during his reception of the Saudi and Omani delegations.
We welcome the exceptional efforts exerted by Saudi Arabia to achieve peace in Yemen and reiterate our support for efforts aimed at achieving peace in the region.
President Mahdi al-Mashhad, in a statement, added that the atmosphere is more favorable than any time before to restore peace in Yemen. Indeed, negotiations also gained momentum since arch rivals Saudi Arabia and Iran agreed to re-establish ties in a deal brokered by China. Officials are now discussing ways to achieve a comprehensive and lasting peace in the region to preserve the right of Yemeni people to decide their political destiny and future.
A spokesperson for police said on Monday that French rescue workers have found a sixth body in the rubble of buildings in the southern city of Marseille that collapsed following an explosion. Authorities had said earlier that they had identified 8 people missing following Sunday's explosion, which destroyed 2 residential buildings and caused a third to partially collapse. The cause of the blast is still unknown. The Kremlin said on Monday that China had every right to respond to what it called repeated provocations against it and carry out military exercises around Taiwan. Peskov also suggested that France, whose President Emmanuel Macron visited China for talks last week, could not broker a deal or a peace deal in Ukraine, as Paris is both indirectly and directly involved in this conflict on the side of Ukraine.
Paris, in fact, has taken the side of one of the participants in the conflict. In addition, they are both indirectly and directly involved in this conflict on Ukraine's side. Therefore, it's difficult to imagine any mediation efforts by France here.
Still with the file of Russia-Ukraine, according to close sources to Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, Kiev was forced to modify some of its military plans before an anti-American attack, while Kremlin denied Moscow's involvement in the leak of documents bearing the military plan of the Ukrainian leadership. Here's Sofyan Kinturi.
Bakhmut is a key region for Russians and Ukrainians, and the center of events after weeks of direct and violent confrontations, in which both sides suffered huge losses. Russia was forced to involve its air forces and intensify its missiles and artillery strikes on the city, in a move that Kiev hastened to describe as scorched earth tactics.
The enemy switched to the so-called scorched earth tactics from Syria. It is destroying buildings and positions, with airstrikes and artillery fire.
Meanwhile, Ukrainian leadership was forced to adjust its military plans while keeping the strategic missions untouchable, following a leak of secret documents containing details related to Ukrainian defenses and the locations of forces. Regarding this point, Kremlin spokesman denied Moscow's involvement in the leaking of thousands of documents related to the Ukrainian plans.
These leaks are quite interesting. They're all being studied, analyzed, widely discussed, but the fact that the United States has long since begun surveillance on various heads of state, especially in the European capitals, has repeatedly surfaced and caused various scandals. So there is a tendency everywhere to blame Russia for everything. This is a general affliction, so there is nothing to comment on here.
Bakhmut is a vital and strategic crossing point for controlling eastern Ukraine, and it will remain the center of Russian military operation events in the coming days, due to the desperate situation of Western-backed Ukrainian forces.
China's military exercises targeting Taiwan have concluded after 3 days in which it encircled the island, simulated missile attacks on cities, and practiced ship launch strikes from the east. Military officials said maneuvers over Taiwan ended successfully and that they were necessary to defend Chinese sovereignty. More details with Islam said.
Chinese military concluded 3-day drills around Taiwan Island on Monday, saying it had successfully completed the exercises and comprehensively tested the capabilities of multiple units under actual combat conditions.
In the military deterrence operation, the theater forces acted on orders to strike and surrounded the island in multiple directions around the clock.
We fully anticipated the complex and difficult conditions, carry out fire assault in accordance with actual combat procedures and operational formations, and effectively tested our ability to put rocket on rack and strike on command at any time.
These military drills come as a warning against Taiwan and external forces after the return of the president of the self-ruling island from the United States.
These operations serve as a stern warning against the collusion between separatist forces seeking Taiwan independence and external forces, and against their provocative activities.
China sees these drills' necessity to safeguard its national sovereignty and territorial integrity.
These drills are necessary to safeguard China's national sovereignty and territorial integrity. The One China principle is an established international consensus and a basic norm of international relations.
Internal reactions from the Chinese capital hailed these exercises as Shanghai residents expressed support of their country and the One China policy.
We still need to deter against Taiwanese independent separatist forces. From current facts, it seems like this has no effect, but from diplomacy or international perspective, it shows the world that Taiwan is a part of China that is still meaningful.
In South China Sea, U.S. destroyer USS Milius was observed by the Chinese army entering China's territorial waters. Beijing denounced the act, which it said is illegal, and its forces warned the vessel about it.
On April 10th, the Milius missile squadron mine layer illegally invaded the waters adjacent to the Meiji Reef near the Chinese Nansha Islands without receiving the approval of the People's Republic of China's government.
Tensions continue in the Asian-Pacific region between Washington and Beijing, as the latter regards meetings between senior U.S. and Taiwanese officials as meddling in its internal affairs, and it is ready to defend its territorial integrity and bring the self-ruling island under its control.
To the development in the USA, at least 4 people were killed and 8 others were hospitalized from a downtown shooting at the Old National Bank on Louisville on Main Street earlier on Monday. In the wake of the mass shooting, President Biden Monday called gun control measures long overdue, urging Republicans in Congress to act. More details in the following report.
A 23-year-old bank employee armed with a rifle opened fire at his Louisville workplace Monday morning, killing 5 people, and 8 others were wounded in the attack. A short while after confirming the assault, police said the shooter was dead, without giving further details. Louisville Metro Police Department Deputy Chief Paul Humphrey said that the shooter had some kind of connection to the bank.
I want to reiterate that there is no active threat. We believe this is a lone gunman involved in this that did have a connection to the bank. We're trying to establish what that connection was to the business, but it appears he was a previous employee.
Kentucky Governor Andy Beshear said that he knew 2 people who had been killed in the shooting and 1 of the injured.
I have a very close friend that didn't make it today. And I have another close friend who didn't either, and one who's at the hospital that I hope is going to make it through.
Eyewitnesses recalled the horror of mass shootings in downtown Louisville, Kentucky.
Assault rifle, and just we heard a click, and the lady next to me turned around and said, "What the hell?" And then he just started shooting.
Describe that again, everything that you saw.
He just started he had a long assault rifle, and you hear the shots just start firing.
The White House is repeating calls for action to control gun violence after Louisville police said at least 4 people were killed and 9 others wounded in the shooting at a bank building in downtown Louisville.
Today we saw another senseless act of gun violence, killed at least 4 Americans and injured at least 8 others, this time in Louisville, Kentucky. The President and the First Lady are praying for those killed and injured in the tragic shooting in Louisville and for the survivors who will carry the trauma for the rest of their lives.
Mass shootings have become recurrent in the United States. So far this year, the nation has experienced 146 mass shootings, using the definition of 4 or more shot or killed, not including the shooter, according to the Gun Violence Archive, a non-profit group.
And finally in our news, Caravan of Hope, led by International Association of Algerians, has demonstrated a good example of human solidarity in the areas affected by the earthquake that shook large areas of southern Turkey and northern Syria 2 months ago. More details in this report.
One after the other, those who lost their homes in the earthquakes in Turkey and Syria are lining up to have iftar meals after a full day of fasting. The Convoy of Hope Association, led by the International Association of Algerians, drew one of the most beautiful pictures of human solidarity in the areas affected by the earthquake that shook large areas of southern Turkey and northern Syria 2 months ago. Idris Rebouh and his team are supervising the provision of thousands of meals in Carmen Marash, Iskandran, Maltaya and Hatay, as these are the areas most affected by the disaster. Meals are prepared by the Algerian team in Turkey during their charitable activity that extends for years.
There are many Algerian associations that have joined their efforts, such as the Association of Algerians in Paris and the Association Espoir in France, as well as the Association of Human Rescue in Algeria, along with the International Association of Algerians, so as to serve this iftar, which consists of thousands of meals in Hatay and another 1,000 in Iskandran, tomorrow God willing. The operation continues to give support during the coming special occasions.
3 daily meals are distributed by Idris and his colleagues since the disaster occurred, and during the month of Ramadan, Algerian volunteers have doubled the pace by extending their work until Suhoor time to serve 3,000 people in the affected areas.
We're here today in Iskandran to represent a number of Algerian associations whose efforts were joined to support our brothers and sisters who were affected by the earthquake in the south of Turkey. We have a schedule to follow during the month of Ramadan. We visited many areas, such as Kahramanmaraş, Iskandran, Malatya, and we're here today in Hatay. We're serving up to 1,000 meals.
A noble message carried by the members of the International Association of Algerians. They chose to leave their families and loved ones in order to mitigate the impact of the earthquake and restore even part of the lost family atmosphere.
Well, that's all for today. For more, our social media platforms are under your service. Thank you for watching. Until next time, take care.